Hello, good people, and welcome to Off the Deep End, a Deep Listens podcast where we cover role-playing video games in depth, and occasionally cover role-playing video games in death. I am your slay master, Braden ArbitraryWater Redacted. Joining me is the master of knives, Chris ZombiePie Redacted.
So I've recently reached out to one Jeff Grubb about something that I think he could do to get more subscribers to both Giant Bomb and his own person. I told him if my name was Jeff, I'd probably always be saying like Jeffinitely and I'm Jeffed up. I wanted to pass this idea by you too. What are our thoughts? He's been ignoring me for the past 3 weeks.
I just told him about the existence of Dr. Hauser, and he said, interesting. So I'm pretty happy with that. Further joining us in this slay revel of blood and podcast is Gino, ThatPinguino Grieco, the master of the two-handed sword.
Hello. I'm glad to be here. Actually, I shouldn't. I guess the guy is not a good guy. So
No.
instead of doing that, I guess I'll go, ooh, yeah. Macho Man didn't do anything, right? He's a good...
I don't... I mean,
One of the biggest black marks against him is just alleged. It's not been ever
Yeah.
confirmed, but
well, I'm no longer down with the sickness, you guys. Some sort of podcast came out last week, and I have no memory of anything that I said during that. I think it was a deep fake by my political enemies.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry your political enemies are so strong and numerous.
yeah. Does Deep Listens have political enemies?
I don't
Do we
think
have a
so.
following enough? I know that I've managed to get 2 people from Twitch that just only wanted to see me finish Legend of Legaia, and they cyberbullied me into finishing Legend of Legaia, but
You know, it's okay. At some point, we will get enough people that people will be like, I remember when Jeff Rude hosted the podcast and it was so much better, which is really my goal in life.
I don't mean this as an insult to Gino, but I don't think we'll ever have a following where that would happen.
It's okay because we're very close to outliving the Confederacy. We're like 2
Yeah,
months
baby.
away.
2 months away for this weird spin-off show that now has become a valued part of the Deep Listens community and network.
That's right.
Almost outlived the Confederacy.
That's right. Take that, you damn rebel scum.
I agree.
Speaking of the Deep Listens community, did you know you can join the Deep Listens community for only $1 on Patreon? You can hang out in a Discord and socially interact with us instead of parasocially interacting. For $3, you get access to the Oji-san cast, a premium podcast where Chris and I and Pete talk about anime. Furthermore, I am pulling out one last call to the people at home. If you want us to shove a video game onto the Deep Listens fanfic slush pile, I will be closing that door probably around mid-May. You have $3. You have about 1 month.
Did Legend of Legaia break you?
It's a little bit of everything. It's like a mixture of looking at the current slush pile and the probability of new people joining. We lose, like, this is real talk. We lose about half of our editorial capacity for slush pile picks. Basically, what it is 6 of our podcasts out of the year, because we generally speaking do about 1 to 2 of these per month. So 6 of these get done on fan picks, and then 6 of these are staff, in quotations, air quotes, but we provide an amount of content that I feel comfortable calling ourselves staff, where we really are only able to do half of the podcast is dedicated to like ideas and concepts. And Braden and I have some ideas about what we want to talk about and do. And if we want to do that within the next 2 years, We need
We're-
more
We're
space.
gonna have to shut the gate at some point.
That's very fair. Okay, I just wanted the listeners to know why we're shutting
Yes,
the gate.
but that's right. You at home, if you want me to play
Mhm.
Hyperdimension Neptunia, you can do it for $3 American per month.
That should go on our list of punishment games.
It's only $36 a year. That's so affordable.
I have no
That's
idea
$36 a
where we
year.
are with
That's
our
less than
progress.
half of what a Switch 2 game will
Wait,
cost.
we've got Gino here. How many more subscribers before we have to play some bullshit?
I believe it is. Let me see. Let me take a look.
He doesn't even know. That shows you how much he cares
It
about
was either
this
6
network.
or 8. It was either 6 or 8. That's
No.
It's not that many, or 3 or 4 OG Songcasts.
Oh God. Oh no.
All right. Well, I mean, what would you guys pick for the main podcast for bullshit for after Duke Nukem Forever? Because
Duke
we've
Nukem,
already talked.
I'm not trying to see beyond Duke Nukem Forever.
Beyond Duke Nukem Forever that's my favorite.
I think we said Y2K at like 100.
Yeah.
That's us.
We can all do it. I think M would have some things to say about that game. I think Pete would have some things to say about that game.
Probably.
Yeah. So, anyway, door is closing for fan picks. If you would like us to put your fan pick in a pile that we will get to at some point, you have a month and a half.
Uh-huh.
Furthermore, you can have us play games like this fan pick from a fan of the show, ThatPinguino. It's called Legend of Legaia.
Legaia.
Legend of Disgaea.
Nope.
Legend of
Dragoon. Wait, no. Fuck.
No, fuck. Legend of Zelda.
Legend of Legend. Yeah, Legend of Zelda. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
No.
So you play this chick named Zelda.
Yeah.
She's
Androgynous.
got
Androgynous elf woman named Zelda.
twink boyfriend Link.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Legend of Legaia. This is a game that Gino picked for us, and we were lucky to convince him to do something with us. So, considering that it is your pick, Gino, why don't you explain what this game is?
What is this game, Gino?
So Legend of Legaia is a RPG for the Sony PlayStation that stars Vaughn, a silent protagonist who is studying martial arts. He's coming of age, and he's in a world surrounded by mist that makes monsters, which is legally distinct from another game about a young boy who's walking around on a continent covered in mist that makes monsters. And the hook of this RPG is that it kind of has Street Fighter fighting game inputs for combos. So kind of like imagine if every one of your characters was Sabin from Final Fantasy VI or something. You have to put in, like, it's not a timing based thing. It's still like a menu based input system. But when you input your attacks, they go into a bar, and if the attacks are done in the right sequence, you get a combo. And the combos will do more damage than if you just did regular attacks. That is kind of the hook. The other hook is you get these monsters on your arm called Raseru that allow you to absorb certain monsters and turn them into spells that you can cast. So some of the enemies you fight, you want to beat and then absorb so that you can get spells, and that is how you get magic in this game. Did I miss any other big things? It's all about combos.
The Sero magic system is basically a weird, I guess, clone of the Pokemon system. So this game's
It's
got
a little
monster
bit monster
capturing.
catching and a little bit grinding to get the souls in Aria of Sorrow.
This game, I would say, pretty visually, like pretty obviously, was operating under the shadow of something greater than it. And there's
Perhaps.
no use dancing around it because, I mean, I think that this game does certain things that are interesting and even admirable, but a game came out, generally speaking, a year before it, and it makes this look like, and it makes this feel like a weird, not necessarily low rent, but workman-like product when it probably wasn't. What was
So-
that game?
And what game are you referencing?
Final Fantasy VII.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The one with the guy with the sword and Eris. So Legend of Legaia came out in Japan on October 29th, 1998. It came out in the United States of America and the rest of North America on March 16th, 1999. It did not reach European shores until May 27th, 2000. It was developed by Procyon, who were an internal Sony studio kind of established around the same time as Polyphony Digital. The difference is Polyphony Digital still exists, and they're still probably shoving
Cars into
microphones
sound booths.
underneath BMWs. Whereas Procyon is credited on 3 games: Legend of Legaia, Legend of Legaia 2, and Kenran Butosai, the Mars Daybreak. So this was very much internal Sony covering their bases.
Something that they learned from, let's say, a pretty negative experience that Sega had in every console they made after the Genesis, which is if you have major third-party studios side with one console and not yours, you're kind of just screwed.
And, we also saw some of this when they made Legend of Dragoon a couple years later. As we kind of covered when we did Breath of Fire 3, this was the era where everyone had to have their own JRPG.
Project. Like, lest we not forget, like, Final Fantasy VII was kind of like a dam breaker of a game. It introduced to an entire generation JRPGs, and it set technical standards for both the PlayStation 1 and the industry as a whole. And there's going to be another JRPG that comes out much later that basically said, no, this genre is not niche. This genre is goddamn mainstream as you know what. This can sell millions. The other game I'm hinting at is Dragon Quest VII. But so everyone was working on a JRPG, especially in Japan, because it was a cheat code. Like, there's no use, like, dancing around that. But, like, if you had a JRPG in development, it was probably going to sell X number of units at minimum.
So just a question. Y'all have played
Yes.
more JRPGs of this era than I have at this point. How many JRPGs went for the all polygonal look that Legaia does?
So
PS1.
I think this game's presentation is probably its
Best part.
most ambitious aspect.
Yes.
Because a lot of JRPGs from this era were still very heavily sprite based.
Either sprite based or pre-rendered backgrounds. One or the
Yes.
other they picked.
Your Alundras and your Wild Armses.
Yes. So to answer Gino's question, most of them were still sprite based. and that is even going to persist well into the PS2. People are still going to make 2D JRPGs.
But
so going
yeah,
the full polygonal route was, I would say, unorthodox, especially, for a almost damn near first time developer ish.
it feels like this game's flex. Because I think presentationally, I think parts of this game still look fantastic, and you can tell where the effort went. So yeah, let's just break down the mechanics while we're talking here. So, as Gino mentioned, it is turn-based JRPG combat with the twist of you are chaining together individual punches and kicks to create combos. And the way the game presents that very much looks like a 3D fighting game. It looks remarkably like a like Street Fighter EX, where all of these combos and special moves, it's not just the spells or the summons like in a Final Fantasy. Like, your regular hitting a guy has a level of flair and flashiness to it that looks like a fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
And the character models in the battles, like in the overworld, everyone, looks very much like an NPC model from a JRPG of this era, your Final Fantasies and whatnot.
More 7, like think the low detail
blocky
7
chibi.
Yeah.
But in the battle screen, you can tell where the polygons went.
Yeah. In the combat screens, you're looking at like Final Fantasy 8, not like 7, 8 levels of detail. Probably 8 and 9 levels of details in these characters.
Okay, so something that you can say to this game's benefit in terms of those blockier in-game or in-universe models is they did address, I think, a concern or a problem that people had with Final Fantasy VII, which is you can't really oftentimes tell what the emotional states of the characters are during story moments.
Mhm.
They put a considerable amount of effort into having communicable emotions on those blocky polygons and models, which is very quaint. But you see characters smile, you see characters cry, and this is actually kind of when I found an interview with one of the persons behind Contrail, Procyon, and Legend of Legaia. I was actually surprised to find out that he hated the look of this game because he thought it was too anime and cartoony, and he wanted it to be more realistic. Akin to, he wanted a game that was more like Final Fantasy VIII than Final Fantasy VII. But it gets the job done, and that's good on them, all things considered.
I think the game still looks pretty good for something from this era.
Obviously, if even
it's not Final Fantasy VIII, it's not Vagrant Story.
Sure, and there is this game has a PS1 frame rate problem that is incredibly understandable for something that's trying to have the fluidity and intricacies of fighting game moves. So there are definite moments where the game hitches up and the frame rate visibly turns to like 9 to sub 5. Some of the more complex summoning animations and spells that have, let's say, a higher than average particle amount, those definitely chug.
Yeah.
But
and also the world map here, the draw distance is pretty far for a world map of this era too, and you move so slow on that world map.
You move so
it's
slow.
Reasons.
But technically, I say that this game deserves at least some credit for doing some things that put it not necessarily on par with Final Fantasy VII, but it is attempting to at least be in the same conversation, just from a pure technical perspective.
Punching above its weight.
Way above.
For
like, for this era, The ambition of having a fully polygonal world, fully polygonal enemies, um, and pretty detailed sprites at the same time. Like, not there are not very many games that attempted this, and pulled it off. Like, it drops frames here and there, but the animations are smooth. I feel like the combos look snappy. They look very cool. Some of the animations for the summon, like the different spells, also are pretty impressive. And I feel like there was a JRPG animation arms race around this time for the intricacy of summon animations. And this game
Hmm.
punches above its weight in that domain as well. So I feel like it's a game that the looks. We'll get to the combat at some point,
Hmm.
about how long it stays fun and novel. But the look, it is unique and impressive,
And
and the
it has
music I
a
think is also good.
good soundtrack
Yeah,
too.
that combat music, that drum and bass in the combat music is so good. You like snare drums? They've got you covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It still has some of those expected problems, I think maybe slightly worse. When you start to explore some of these towns, I would say it's clearly less of a whole world than, say, anything by Square or even Enix at this time. Um, but they make up for it in terms of like, yo, this world is 3D. And obviously, with some exceptions, there are times when it's like bridging the gap, and that's totally fine. Um, I guess the only quibble I have with the game, other than its sometimes occasionally bad frame rate, is the menu in this game is maybe a little too obsolete for what it's trying to do. There are certain
Uh,
things where it feels like it's borrowing from a template or established
you mean
menus
the
or systems from other games that they really should have known better because this doesn't meld well with what you're doing.
you mean the combat menu or the like
I
equipping
think
your character
both
menus?
the in-game menu where you're actually needing to like deal with the equipment of your characters and like
Uh-huh.
fanning through move lists and that type of stuff. Plus, I also think that the menu in combat can be at times overwhelming, especially at first blush.
I I think the UI in this game is entirely acceptable for the era it came out in. I also was using a controller instead of wondering where I mapped the triangle button on my keyboard, so I don't know.
So the thing that I think the regular menu is pretty bog standard, right? Like it looks like a menu of this era. It's just some like blue boxes with white text in it. And maybe there's a little too much going on with the equipment and what some of the stats mean, maybe. But I think that the arrow key menu of the actual combat menu is kind of interesting. Like they basically made each of the cardinal directions on your arrow key, your D-pad, a different menu option, and you kind of mouse down into those. Every direction you press takes you kind of further into the menu. Um, so you're not just like looking at a regular list like you are in like a Final Fantasy of this era, in a lot of games of this era. Suikoden, like a lot of them are just here's a list of actions you can take, and they're in a box in a vertical sort of some kind. Maybe it's a table with two columns. So sometimes you've got two columns worth of actions. This one is actually trying to use the D-pad to make it kind of a directional selection, and I thought it's interesting, and especially like when you input the actual attacks. Once you get into that menu, because you're basically inputting Street Fighter combos, like high, low, you press up on the D-pad, down, up, down, and it kind of feels like you're inputting a Street Fighter combo, though you have to press the X button to like set it in. Um, it's a very novel menu for the combat. I don't know too many other games that have tried it, um, especially the attack part of it. What did y'all think of inputting those combos?
Thank goodness this game remembers your last previous attack. Otherwise, this would get really fucking annoying pretty quick.
I think it's very cool the way you chain together basic moves, and there's an emphasis on discovering combos, or you can do what I did and just look them all up and immediately have them and figure out which ones do the most damage.
If I
So-
were a kid, the idea of searching for combos organically would be cool. As an adult, it seems like a complete waste of my goddamn time, and I had zero interest in doing it.
Very fair. Yeah, as a kid, it was very fun to discover these combos organically. I don't think you would ever discover, or it would be very hard for you to discover organically some of the longer combo strings. But you felt like a god whenever you found them. You know, like the miracle arts, the like super powerful ones that you get at the very end of the game when you have a full bar. Um, so
To the game's defense, there are plenty of NPCs whose sole purpose is to teach you combos that you could
Yes.
reasonably not know or not have in your repertoire.
did either of you run into the like enemies that fly or are short, and so you can't hit them with low kicks or high kicks?
Yeah.
That's kind of clever.
That's clever. I think that the game doesn't do enough to use either symbology or visual cues to communicate like what the strengths and weaknesses of those enemies are, because there were definitely times when it's like, oh, I guess this thing is small and I got to use low kicks. It didn't look small at first, but whatever. There are just so many times where it's like, wait, what am I dealing here? Whereas in, say, something like Pokemon, I always feel like I understand what is a water Pokemon. I always feel like I know what a grass Pokemon is. Now, yeah, things get a little dicey when you deal with the hybrid Pokemon, but in general, I can at least figure out some of those affinities, and there's symbology usually to coincide with that. Some of these enemies are palette swaps of previous enemies, but those color changes and those like minor differences don't actually coincide with an elemental change or a weakness development. So a little confusing on that end.
Very fair.
I think that this game would have benefited from giving different combos and different special attacks more concrete properties. I think it turns into a, like, even early on when you can only do you can only chain one or two specials together.
Mm-hmm.
It very much turns into a game of, all right, how am I going to do the maximum amount of damage?
Yeah, and something that we didn't say is like if the last move in one attack is the first move in another attack, they combo. So you get to like
Yeah.
save on an input. So there are strings that very much play nicely with each other. If something ends in a low
Yes.
kick and the first input is a low kick for the next one, it allows you to do two combos with 5 slots instead of only one. And that is valuable. You know, so there are some strings you're just going to use a bunch, or like some of them even combo into themselves. Like there's one that's like
Yeah.
left, right, left, left. You know, so left, right, left, left. So you can just go left, right, left, right, left, and you get 2 of the same move, and that's pretty powerful. And also because there are things that can miss high and things that can miss low. If you just have combos that only use your right and left hand, those are generally just better, right? You're never going to miss with those. So yeah, there are definite flaws. I think, Braden, to your point, like I think there's only one move in the game that has a property. And it's one of Noah's. Noah has like a kiss move that can paralyze enemies.
Right. No, it's the
Yeah.
one that makes things confused, which is
That's
actually
it.
pretty important.
It's the only
But
combo that does something like that in the whole game.
mhm.
And so it's one of those things where I think a lot of these moves look very cool and they still animate very well. They're flashy. There are, there's a big text that says hyper art on the screen.
They yell when they do them.
Yeah, and then they yell their move name out in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tornado Flame.
And it'd be great if the game gave me incentive to use one move over another instead of just playing the calculator game and seeing how much one combo does to an enemy versus another.
Did either of you pick out who the voice is of Vaughn?
Is it Link?
No.
Gino's already said this, so I won't say it. I want to see if you can give another good guess, Braden.
Another good guess. 90s. We're talking 90s Japan.
Okay.
Voice actor.
And
you could just say a character they voice. You don't have to come with the voice
Okay.
actor's name.
Think of a 90s anime. 90s
Okay.
or early
90s anime where
2000s
someone
anime.
would shout, Korea!
Is it a Gundam?
No.
No.
Great teacher Onizuka.
Oh.
Yeah, the hora hora hora. Yep,
Okay.
that's Onizuka guy.
That's good.
It is. When I watched Great Teacher Onizuka, I was like, I recognize that yelling. And yeah, it's from all the combat shouts in this game. And he only does the combat shouts. Like there's no one else talks outside of combat.
Yeah, there's no voiced dialogue. It's just they say their cool names.
They say their move.
I've always kind of, and then some people shared that, oh wow, I hadn't really thought of that. It's like, I wonder how many people, especially in the PS1 era, were getting exposed to Japanese without even knowing it, and maybe thought that all of these sounds were just random, like onomatopoeias or like just random sounds to give you the illusion. Like, I thought about this when I realized, Haya, Zelda's saying a Japanese word. That's not just a random, like, yeah, swish the sword sound, but that's like actual Japanese. Like, I wonder how many people don't know that they've been actually exposed to the Japanese language through
Oh,
games.
100%. I didn't know so before Vaughn says tornado flame, he says ikuze. And I was like, I didn't know that's here I go. He says, here I go, tornado flame.
Yeah.
Which
But
is good.
yeah. So I guess we're gonna kind of jump into it. The combat is cool in concept.
There's too much.
There's like a couple of execution things immediately that causes it to bog down. I think the first one is that when you need to shift things up, figuring out what actually is good, and this is kind of something that connects to Braden's point. Like, when you realize that your attacks are suboptimal to the enemy that is before you, figuring out how to get yourself out of that hole, not super easy. And this seems like it's by design if you haven't been endlessly trying to figure out every single combo. And so especially those early bosses, even though they are easy, can drag on a little longer. And because the game has these very intricate animations and you're inputting these combos, even the most asinine random encounter seems to bog down a little bit longer than your average normal menu-based battle.
Yeah.
There are also spells that you get. There are monsters called Seru, and they are basically your Pokemans. And in order to capture a Seru, there's a percentage chance whenever you defeat a monster with one of your three characters. There's Vaughn, who is nameless protagonist. There's Noah, who is a 12-year-old girl raised in a cave by a wolf. And there's Gala, who is monk. And they each have different elemental affinities that determine how useful their spells are. So, for example, Vaughn, his affinities are fire and dark. So, fire and dark.
Okay, so
Pokemon
I had to look this
spells.
up because he has even more affinities than that. He's fire, dark, earth. And so everyone has a dominant element and then a secondary element where they're just as strong at using. For example, Noah is not just wind, even though that's the only visible element that's displayed next to her
really?
character portal. She's wind and water. And then Gala is light and lightning.
Okay. So they do
So
all have. So there's no Seru that one of them just wouldn't have an affinity for.
Yeah.
Every Seru at least would be slightly more beneficial to be cast by one of them.
Yes.
yes.
Makes sense.
So
It's kind of cool.
there's a part of this game that I feel like the game doesn't do a great job of explaining.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
and again, this goes back to the point of like this game is maybe too long and slow. Getting these goddamn Ceros sucks. The draw rate, the capture rate is so it's just like
It's too low.
annoyingly low. Like when we talked about Final Fantasy IX, and we talked about how a real annoying thing about Final Fantasy IX is that Zidane steal rate, despite the fact he's established as being this master thief, is way too low for anyone to like reasonably justify what that rate is. You're like level like in Dungeon 2, and some of the monsters that you could actually capture, like the draw rate is like below 50%. You shouldn't do that. This is the second or third environment, like my second chance in which I can get this stuff. Why?
Yeah.
And then that entire system doesn't unlock for Noah and Gala at least a level or two removed from when they're introduced and you're already playing them.
Yeah, until they get their raw Seru, they can't capture Seru. And another thing about the magic system is that casting spells makes the spells stronger. So the more you cast each of them, it will deal more damage. They will get additional effects. So like Gizzard, the first fire spell you get, it eventually like lowers your enemy defense and stuff. Like some of them gain poison effects. Some things start as poison and become instant kills. Like it can get significantly more powerful by casting them. But this game does not have a great renewable resource for MP. Unless you're just like grinding by summoning these Seru and then going to an inn. Which is annoying, you know, like you really only get a few chances to summon these things in a dungeon when you care about it. So you want them to be impactful, and sometimes they just aren't. Or they're impactful like 3 times, and that's all you really get to use, especially early on. Did either of you really like glom on to any of the summons? Did you like any of the Seru?
Yeah,
Or any of
like
the
obviously
animations?
healing magic is good. Yeah, and then there's Earth Dog, I think Kamaro. He basically holds the fort when you're not able to spirit, which Jesus Christ, we have to talk about spiriting and like the bar. But Kamaro is maybe the only offensive spell that Vaughn is going to cast for 90% of the game.
It insta-kills sometimes.
It does the most amount of damage for not a prohibitive amount of cost of MP, and B, the spells that are above Kamaro aren't that great. And then for Gala, the only spell he's really going to cast is Uluru in terms of offensive spells. Again, everyone will just use 50% or more of their spells will be healing. But he gets one light spell and then he never looks back. And for the same reasons, the spells that are above that are economically prohibitive, and the spells below it just don't do enough for the lower mana cost. And then Noah should not use magic at all. Ever.
Yeah. She has the longest attack bar. So each of these characters have different lengths of attack bars, and so it allows them to combo more or less easily.
So once I got those spells, I just didn't see anything other than those spells.
I like Fork because it's a nightmare.
It's actually Spoon.
Oh, it's Spoon? Fuck.
Get it right.
Spoon. It's a golem made of spoons.
Spoons and eyes.
Spoons and eyeballs. It's a cutlery golem.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good.
Yes. It's tremendous. So yeah, the way Spirit is basically this game's defend move, but it has the added benefit of basically doubling the size of your attack bar. And so like you were playing Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler, it is often worth your while to defend for one turn in order to bank up a longer attack for the next turn.
Yeah, it becomes a
And
very necessary part of the game, which means more often than not, your first turn in any battle is spiriting, which leads to this game's length problems because your first turn is usually 0 damage because you're spiriting for combos that are going to do more damage. Now, to the game's defense, these combos that you oftentimes get as a result of spiriting do more than double the damage. They do triple and they are immediately the best techniques that you'll get. However, it's not something that you want to skip because they're very, very necessary combos. Like entire arts are impossible unless you spirit. And something that drove me absolutely crazy is when you level up, the bar gets bigger. Obviously, that makes perfect sense. It is not very clear, however, if you have enough space for another input or move, or if that's just dead space that's just going to be there and just like a void of nothingness. So that sucked.
Yeah, that's fair. And like one thing, just because you input the combo for a art does not mean you will do it. There's an AP point, which if you do not have enough AP, the combo just won't come out. So every combo has a certain AP cost. So when you get to the high level combos, you're not just spiriting to make your bar bigger, it also refills your AP. And you will have to do that once or twice for some of the bigger combos, just because you're gonna run out of AP.
Yeah,
So
to be
it's a kind
honest,
of a
I
bummer.
felt like the AP system was completely unnecessary. This game doesn't need it, and it should just let you do the combos if you have the right amount of bar for it.
I agree.
More than anything else, it just slows everything down to a crawl because you're spending more turns spiriting so as that you can do the cool stuff that you should be able to do on tap.
Yep. Yeah, they put the fiddly bits in weird places. Like there's items that extend your bar for the entire battle, so you don't need to do spirit to have the long bar, but then you run out of AP anyway, so you still need to
and
do
you get
spirit.
AP back by doing Spirit. So
Mhm. End up doing it anyway. It's, this is a game with a lot of ideas that I think do not come together to a super cohesive whole. And the encounter rate just too high. Period.
Yep. So
Which-
we found this out when ZP was playing this on stream, but apparently in the North American version of the game, the experience and money gain is halved.
Mm-hmm. They
Compared
made the
to the
game harder for
Japanese
the North
version.
American release because it was like inadvertently when they released it in Japan, similar to say the Eternal Sonata fiasco when Gino, you played the PS3 version of the game. It was kind of brandished a children's game, and
Mhm.
so they made it harder for the North American release. Yeah, think about that.
Yeah, and all it does is extend the runtime, really, for the
Yes.
North American release. It doesn't. The game isn't actually harder. It's just slower.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about something, Braden, that you said, and I guess I played this game well beyond what I probably should have, but I've been thinking about, Braden, something that you said, which is this game does not actually or actionably change your relationship with its mechanics from hour 2 compared to hour 40. And therein lies maybe the biggest sin that this game actually commits.
100%.
it does not warrant or justify being north of 30 hours.
The numbers go higher, and you get items that like make you more powerful. Like there's some accessories that fundamentally change how powerful your character is. But at the end of the day, like maybe you have a caster and they just keep casting, or you have you have Noah doing combos and all she wants to do is do combos. That's it. Like you know what combos you want to do. What, a quarter of the way into the game, you'll know every combo you want to do with all three characters, or so. Like Gala takes a little bit longer to get his miracle arts because his bar grows slower. But yeah, you know Gala's probably your caster, and you know what spells he's going to cast. You know that Noah is going to probably be busting out her miracle art like very early on in the game, and that'll kill people really fast. 100% agree. Like you're locked in. You might summon different Seru just to do it, but it's not because Eater or one of the early Seru won't get the job done.
And in terms of this game also having like dungeons that are a step too far, a level or two too far, when you do figure out the optimal combo for the enemies in this dungeon, because usually it does follow by the standard RPG or JRPG rules, when you do find combos that are getting the job done with this dungeon of smaller enemy types, so you're going to do footsies a lot, or the flying enemy dungeon, so you're using a bunch of high kicks or high punches, you see the same animations over and over again. So the big like cool selling point technically of like seeing these fluid animations, you just end up seeing the same thing over and over again a lot.
Yeah.
You do. And one other kind of cool thing in the combo system is that if you equip a weapon that is not someone's preferred weapon, because they all have one weapon hand, and then all the other parts of their body are unarmed, basically, or they're wearing boots. You can equip a weapon that someone's not proficient with, and though your stats will go up, it will make your weapon hand bar longer. So you can't combo as well using that weapon arm, which is an interesting idea, but in practice, it just means you don't do it, right? You just don't equip a weapon that doesn't equip well. It's better to have the combo efficiency than it is to have slightly higher stats.
It's the kind of game where sometimes you just run into basically level checks. And there are ways you can cheese
certain enemies. You can
cheese certain enemies. You can definitely do sub lower level stuff, but you kind of just also have to grind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you don't have a ton of tools to make that a more expeditious process. It really is, just park your ass in front of this dungeon or near the entrance and just like be here for 30 to 40 minutes.
And
using the same combos against one of two enemy groupings for this area. And yes, as I think you were going to say, Braden, there are speedrunners who have figured out, how to make this.
It turns out a lot of it involves using the slot machines to get a bunch of overpowered items from the obligatory casino area because it's a JRPG in the 90s. And unfortunately, if you get 999 coins, you cannot buy Porygon.
But it is fun that they have the card that lets you deal damage. Like you get a rebate from everything you buy, and it just is a card that's holding this gigantic wad of damage that you can just unload on enemies. You've got abilities to just beat people to death with money. It's got some weird angles for speedrunners to attack. I wish that the base gameplay benefited from those more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It feels like a great foundation for a more interesting combat system. which this is the era where JRPG developers, there are people who are trying to push systems further than just traditional like menu-based turn-based combat, right? So you have this, you have you have a year later, you have FF8, you have kind of the beginning of like a lot of action JRPGs, your Star Ocean 2s and your Tales of Destinies are around this time. And I think a lot of these games kind of suffer in retrospect because they haven't quite figured it out.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, if they had just, to your earlier point, Braden, if they had just stapled a reason for you to use some of these moves other than they combo together cleanly, or they just straight up do the most damage, there could be an interesting combo system here, right? Like if Vaughn's Tornado Flame did fire damage, and so you wanted to use it against things that were weak against fire, or I don't know, Hurricane did that kick, maybe the 2-hit combo on that kick whiffs on certain enemies, or it gives you a buff of some kind. Like giving you a reason to pick a move other than it can hit and hits the hardest, it would do a world of good for this game. But there just aren't compelling reasons to care about which moves you're doing. Pick the strongest Seru, pick the strongest combo, do them as much as you're allowed to, block when you have to so that you can recharge your meter, or to avoid a super move that the enemy's telegraphing. Like, just do that ad nauseum until the end of the game. Do we talk about the story? Since I feel like the combat is pretty, but not great in practice.
So, a couple of things. The story is something that I learned very quickly, that the people who defend this game really do feel like that the notion that this game doesn't have a story, they get a little I would say defensive,
Sure.
which look, I get it. But come on, guys, this is anime horseshit. This is what this game's story is.
This is
Like,
JRPG.
this is a JRPG story. I think the novel thing, or is it novel, or is it actually kind of like weird, is the most important person in the story isn't the protagonist.
No.
Because, goddamn, Vaughn is a nothing burger. His whole character arc
is the
gets
player
resolved.
cipher.
His whole character arc gets resolved within the game's second act. Gala feels completely an afterthought after you do the monastery stuff, although I guess Songhi gives him more of a reason to exist and persist than Vaughn. But the entire story inadvertently, or maybe very vertently, revolves around Noah, who is long lost princess girl raised by wolves, and then her kingdom has been corrupted by tentacles because evil devil spirit. And it follows a story that I think is very reminiscent of previous JRPG stories that we've played and experienced. Like, you could really honestly do a weird little quiz segment, Braden, in which you ask me questions that are about the story of Grandia 2 and Legend of Legaia, and I might actually struggle to determine whether your
I remember.
anonymized sentence is for Grandia 2 or
I
Legend
remember
of Legaia.
Grandia too because those characters have personality.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot of very archetypical stuff, but I would say yeah, there's nothing offensive about Legend of Legaia and its storytelling. It's just very archetypical. It's just, hey man, it's a JRPG story. What if I told you that the kingdom was overcome by mist because of hubris, and then at the end you fight some sort of weird tentacle / seraph creature.
What if I were to tell you a JRPG final boss was a dude thinking he was the ultimate creation of God and or life?
He has silver hair.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think the script is fine. It's not as much of it. It's a little stiff in spots. There's a guy who looks like Akuma, who is your recurring antagonist until he's like, actually, maybe we cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
After, he murders an entire monastery.
Pretty much. He hurts them real bad.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the dark version of your party. The goon squad version of your party that gets introduced.
Yes.
They're fun.
I'm just saying at no point does a sentient plant monster ask you to kill it.
No, it doesn't
Or,
go.
Although
Horse, Bebop, and Rocksteady just stab children.
I guess, the god of creation being a tree is kind of cool. Like, there's a lot of trees, and the trees are good. But once you get to the stuff where you find out, like, who are the raw Seru and the Sim Seru, it's just like it's just a diarrhea of proper nouns, and it's like, this is going over my head. I'm not paying attention to this.
Yeah.
They're the monsters that are the spirits that are attached to your character's arms. Some of them are bad, and they were driven mad by the mist, which was created by
Noah's parents.
not Sephiroth.
Noah's parents, because they wanted to live
Time travel happens at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the time travel.
There's time travel.
So
all of the JRPG biggest hits are here.
There's the flesh dungeon at the end of the game.
Yeah, there is.
It's one of the grosser flesh dungeons.
Buddy, you need to play some Grandia.
Let me tell you about
too,
Valmar.jpg.
Yeah, you need to play Grandia 2, Gino, if you thought this one was a little gross.
Good time.
Yeah,
I call
baby.
it one of the best games we've played for this podcast.
So the story doesn't do enough to justify this game being north of 30 hours. Once again, that is the problem, is that there's just the characters aren't in depth enough to like carry things. Like, say what you will about Gino, say what you will about some of those like pits in Final Fantasy 7 and 8, but at least I can describe the personalities of even goddamn Sid Highwind or Vincent Valentine, other than
This woman
describing
loves trains.
other than what they look like, right? Yeah. And I can do the same with like Renoa and Zell. I can describe what their personalities are without describing what they physically look like.
Yes.
It's very
do
Super
that
Famicom
with
Vaughn. And then beyond our core characters, the powerful trio, who else are there other than
their sultry
shitty
woman
brother and Trebsis, tree guy?
Oh, there's
sultry
woman. There's your evil, the evil goon version of your party.
There's baby Jesus.
There's the baby Jesus and his 3 forms.
This game is basically
mom.
the Bible when you think about it. Yeah, this is like a recreation of the Bible.
There's your girlfriend's mom. There's your
or
girlfriend.
Taoism.
Mom's girlfriend's there.
Yeah. You missed this, Gino. We had someone in my chat. I don't mean to, because I love them. They sent me money. Someone who said that Legend of Legaia is their favorite game. And I love you. If you're watching this and listening to this, I love you. But they were trying to tell me that Legend of Legaia may be a retelling of the Bible and or Taoism.
Sick. No.
I mean,
Right in, man.
No, but
Right in. If you
Joseph
got your shot,
Campbell wrote
give me your
Hero
shot.
with 1,000 Faces.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those faces is Vaughn.
Svan is the Legend of Legaia.
I don't know, man. It's just these characters don't have any personality other than Noah having kind of an easy and sometimes compelling story to follow, especially when her goddamn family gets massacred. That was kind of cool.
This game has a lot of mini
And
games
some of the
too.
body horror stuff have gesticulation that I was not predicting, and I thought that was kind of also visually interesting.
Good flesh dungeon.
Yeah. The fishing mini game is there.
There's a
It's
fishing minigame.
terrible.
It's
Yeah,
There's-
imagine being someone who did the fishing minigame over and over again.
it's fine.
Couldn't be me.
It's a glorified slot machine, and the slot machines are faster and more immediate. I don't know.
Fish models look fun. I don't know.
You see, there's only like 6, and half of them are like low chance rate until you get to 10,000 fish points.
Yeah, well, it was a JRPG in the 90s. They had to put a fishing
Like I
minigame
said,
in there.
man, if I was a kid, this game would have been my jam, and I would have probably put in even more hours into it.
Yeah.
It feels primed for that era that no longer exists, because thank God, in which we all only got like one game per month.
It's
Like,
true.
In that sense, this game is perfect for that.
I mean,
So I get it
have
when
great
people say they have
news.
nostalgia for this game. I do. I totally understand why people have nostalgia for this game. Because if this was the only game you got, it would have been fine for that.
I have great news, Chris.
What?
Now that video games are going to be $80,
Oh God, we're going back.
we're going back. You only get one video game a month,
At most.
and it's
And you cherish it.
and you better get the most you can out of your copy of Super Mario Kart World.
Yeah. One other thing that I feel is kind of glaring is there's no overworld like airship or car or something to make you move faster on the overworld. So they give you these doors of wind that just warp you from town to town.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes it so that even if there was stuff going on in the overworld map, which, I mean, it's mostly empty, you wouldn't explore. You wouldn't bother because it takes too long. So, like...
On top of that, it drops you in multiple environments where your doors of wind are the only way in which you can exit where you're at. Like, you get into that camp with the flying people, and the only way you can get out of there is if you door of wind it if you want to visit your previous locations. And then you go to the second continent even before that. You got a door of wind if you want to visit your old locations.
Yeah. And
so that's weird.
I mean, having a fast travel system that costs you money to access is kind of annoying. Again, this game has a lot of interesting ideas that are all half-baked. Except, I guess, that sick combat music, which is quite good.
Yeah. Oh, it's... Well, I have great news. No one likes the sequel to this game.
Yeah. So I think part of it, looking at this interview, they make the point of all things, like, this game ended up having a weird conflict with the programming team and the art and design team. And the second game was developed by an entirely different studio, which was all of the programmers who fought the artists and designers tooth and nail about how to make it. So that's why that second game is so different.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get to it. Maybe we won't.
I won't.
Maybe we won't.
I'm not going to play it. Because it's one of those games where people don't seem to think very highly of it. So instead, what if we ranked the one that we just played?
I don't harbor any ill will against this game. I don't. If there are those of you that really love Legend of Legaia because you played it at the right time in your life, I totally get it. Playing it today, I think the shortcomings are a bit more obvious. And I just, man, this game would have been so much better, and I would have felt so much strongly or more strong about it if it was like at least 15 to 20 hours shorter.
I think this game has the misfortune of being surrounded by a bunch of more interesting PSX JRPGs.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like there's not exactly let's say a drought of high quality PS1 JRPGs. Even if you want to say you want to play things that are not Square or Enix.
Yep.
There's better things on this platform to go back to and relive. I don't know how Gino's going to react to this. I would play Threads of Fate before this
I
game.
agree. Yep, it is a better game.
I would play Threads of Fate before this game.
Would you play
Well,
what's
look,
the weird mana game where it's like you're building the map?
God,
Children of Mana?
Children of Mana. Okay, not Gino.
Saga
Braden.
Frontier, huh?
Yeah. Unlimited Saga? Wait, no.
No.
Top three,
okay.
bottom three. Let's do this.
So yes, the current top 3 on this list. Number 1, Might and Magic 6: The Mandate of Heaven. Number 2, Sui Koden. Number 3, Xenosaga Episode 1. At some point, we'll find something that will be up there. Because I feel like if we ever played Suikoden 2, that'd probably be higher. At the bottom, at number 70, Unlimited Saga. Number 71, Hoshiwo Mirohito. 72, Descent to Under Mountain. How about I start in the middle?
That sounds about right.
And
Is
yeah.
it better or worse than Hybrid Heaven?
Yeah, is it better or worse than Hybrid Heaven?
I can't say.
Ah.
I can't say.
I can. I would. Both games have unique fighting based combat.
Hmm.
One of them lets you power bomb a lizard man.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on this, Chris?
This goes above Hybrid Heaven.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the bigger debate is
it's a more fully formed game.
All right, let's start the knife fight. Is this better or worse than Legend of Dragoon?
I would rather play Legend of Dragoon.
Ugh.
How much of that is because of the presence of Lavit Slambert?
Legend of Dragoon has Lavit Slambert.
I mean, it also has at least characters.
It has characters. It has one of the more hilariously incompetent translations of the era.
Counterpoint: this game looks better. That's something. Musically, are they comparable? And I don't think the combat of Legend of Dragoon is better. It is.
I think the combat of both of these games
bad.
is
Or mediocre, I should say.
Trying to make something interesting and novel and failing. But yeah, I think I'd rather put Legend. Maybe it's just the part where that episode was like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. But I'd rather play Legend of Dragoon than this.
I played Legend of Dragoon for that episode. That's why I'm not sure which one I would put higher. I feel like these two games, both being Legend of Blank and being on the PlayStation and made by also ran Sony in-house studios, they are kind of they're of a piece.
Yes. Legend of Dragoon definitely had more money behind it.
Yes. There are.
I feel like it also at least has more keeping you interested.
It has more kinds of mechanics.
There are also more people who will be mad at us if we say Legend of Dragoon is worse.
Yeah.
All right, I'm willing to put it below Legend of Dragoon. What's immediately below Legend of Dragoon?
The very first Dragon Quest.
Oh fuck, this is another knife fight.
Dragon Quest 1 is minimalistic to a fault.
Yeah, but it
But it's
respects your
also
time.
But it's also, I literally beat that game in like 6 hours.
There's a beauty to that I don't want to discount.
There is a simplicity and a minimalism to Dragon Quest 1. Digital Devil Monogatari Megami Tensei. How do we feel about that? I would rather
I would put this maybe above Monogatari.
Okay, you'd put this above Megami Tensei.
But below Dragon Quest 1?
Yeah, okay. I can accept that.
All right.
I mean, I'd probably put it lower, but
what's below Monogatari?
Xenosaga Episode 2.
Okay, it doesn't go above Xenosaga Episode 2.
Yeah.
So you're pushing.
So you want to put it?
I'm
put
saying
it?
I would put this game. If I wanted to be mean, I would put this game above, probably Risen 1.
No, God, Jesus. What?
I would rather play Final Fantasy Adventure Fact Xanadu, the PS1 version of Diablo, and Biomotor Unitron over Legaia. But I think I dislike this game more than both of you.
All right, so okay, let's take a step back. What is below Monogatari?
What is below Megami Tensei 1? Xenosaga Episode 2.
Yeah, but we didn't like Xenosaga Episode 2 is a horrible disappointment.
I didn't like.
Yeah, that game's a bummer.
Huh?
I didn't like that game. I listened to that podcast.
No, it's a bummer.
So I would put it at least above that.
Okay. Let's do that then.
Hey, mediocrity.
All right. Congratulations to our new number 24, Legend of Legaia. Let it be known in the record that I think it should be lower.
Well, you're just gonna have to fish until you feel differently.
I played and finished the recent remake of Star Ocean 2, another JRPG that came out on the PlayStation in 1998. And let me tell you, that game's fucking great. We could have been playing that.
Yeah. So, Braden,
so what's next?
What comes next for the Off the Deep End?
It's my pick, motherfucker.
Hell yeah, it is.
And we're gonna play another video game I spent too much money on eBay like 3 years ago.
Oh God.
That's
He's
right.
Been
we're gonna play
for a while.
The Gooch's classic, Hironobu Sakaguchi's Mistwalkers: The Last Story for the Nintendo Wii.
Oh hell yeah!
Okay.
And I'm going to justify the thing I bought for $90 at 11 p.m. while in the throes of depression.
No. If you're going to embarrass yourself, you have to complete the sentence. You used a part of your stimulus check during COVID for this game.
No. By this point, it wasn't a stimulus check during COVID. It was my student loan money.
Oh, your student loan forgiveness money. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry that we get the two mixed up.
Yeah. Don't do what I did. But we're gonna find out. We're gonna learn all about Project Rainfall, and we're gonna really find out if all of these late era Wii JRPGs were worth anyone's time.
Yay!
People seem to like that Xenoblade thing. I don't know.
Now it's a mainstream franchise for Nintendo.
Kids love Xenoblade, but how come I want to be Xenopaid?
Speaking of Xenopaid, if you wanted to support the show on Patreon, you could do so. Patreon.com/deeplistens.
That's right. And also thank you to SuperSex420 for making our music that we play during the beginning and ending of this podcast, like you are hearing now. Thank you, Gino.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Christopher.
I'm not going to say anything that makes you uncomfortable and or is demeaning to you as the host of this podcast. I respect you too much.
We're getting divorced. And thank you, the listener at home. Remember, there's no such thing as cheating in a single-player game, especially if you are in the casino playing at Legend of Legaia, grinding for 6 hours to get overpowered items. You could just cheat. There's no such thing as it in a single-player game. Bye!